So what I've done here on the left side is I have the inner sill plate going the length of the car from the rear wheel opening up to the front edge, clamped in place. And the objective of this exercise is to locate this inner sill at the correct height of the inner sill plate and preparatory for welding it. And what I've done is I've leveled it on the frame, checked it. Over here I'm not sure it should be level because that's kind of an angled shape, but it's very close to level anyway. And what I'm really concerned about is to make sure that I have enough gap between here and here, because the rocker panel flange needs to fit in here when it's welded. And that looks pretty even to me all the way across. Down at the bottom, we've got a similar even gap. Looks even enough to me. Certainly at the bottom there's plenty of room to put the finishing plate later, and also before the finishing plate goes on, the rocker panel welds again below the flange of the inner sill here, which stops here, and there's a gap here, and that's where the flange of the rocker panel will weld after the inner sill is in there. I've got it all clamped together. I've adjusted basically this height. This height of the inner sill plate has already previously been set. Got a small gap over here for welding. Same thing at the back edge. Small gap. You can't see it much because I get all the stuff in front of it. And the flanges, this inner sill plate, of course, has to come up and meet these flanges. Got a light over here, sorry. There. That flange is just about sitting down on this inner sill plate. This side, it's a little bit up, a little gap there. I will have to adjust that. This B-post over here is just clamped in right now. It's not welded in, so it's clamped in for measurement. I've got the top over here bumping against this piece, and the only way I could, at first this was a little high, I trimmed it up top to adjust its height this way. And for a frame of reference, it was not a lot to measure. What I did is I measured from the top here to the opening of the gap where the screw plate goes into here, where the let's get some better light. The screw plate goes in here. There's an opening for it over here. These were made, I'm pretty sure, by the same company, so I used that gap as a reference. They're within like a 1/16 of an inch from here to the top of the hole. Over here, at least it's something, some kind of frame of reference that gets it in the ballpark. Of course, when you put the doors on, there's a lot of adjustment in here, up, down. And since this B-post is not yet welded in, I'm not too worried about that at this point, other than the fact that I want it in the ballpark. Okay, so the flange for the B-post is also nice and tight over here, and a little bit off on the right side. And on the other side I had to adjust them once I got this all welded together. So I'm happy with the fit of the inner sill to the inner sill plate, and I've placed 2 screws, sheet metal screws, through here and here, because I'm going to take all these clamps off because I've got to disassemble it for welding and punch holes all along the welding area for doing plug welding. So that's how I've aligned the inner sill to the inner sill plate on the left side. Next thing you'll do will be to punch holes and weld it up. This is that inner sill plate, inner sill being welded to the inner sill plate, and I have used a new trick, and I thought I would share that. I'll just show you. I've done about half of it, and you can see the plug welds in here, and I'm very pleased with them. Each one I only had to hit once. The old technique I used, I had to hit them all, mostly at least twice. Had voids, had to re-weld them, had problems with that. And what's different this time is 2 things. I'm using you see I haven't welded this side, and here are the holes. And one thing I've done differently this time, I don't know if you can see this, is I've actually gone down inside the outer hole, which is 3/16 diameter, which is the recommended size for the plug welds. And I've gone in with a 1/8 inch drill and I've hogged out the steel beneath. I found, and the reason I did that is because I'm using this, let me see if I can get it in view and show you. I'm using this Eastwood spot welding nozzle, and you see the two projections on the end of it. That's what's different about it. It looks very much like the regular nozzle, except it's got these two projections. And the idea with that is that you put it down on a spot weld hole, and these two things sit right at the right height, and you get a consistent height and temperature. The other thing you do when you're using this, is you use a tool like this. They sell a kit that has a version of this. I already had this tool that has a copper backing, which is nice because if I make a hole all the way through, the copper backs it up and you can weld the hole shut. So what you do is you take this thing, it's got an opening, the copper's behind it, you just clamp it down hard, holds the two pieces of steel tightly together. You got the hole there, the nozzle goes down right inside the groove, just like that. Now, I hadn't been using this. I bought this tool a long time ago, and when I first used it, I had difficulty, and I'm really not sure why. You know, every time you try something for the first time, you're a beginner, it doesn't always come out very well. But I decided I'd try it again, and I noticed that the first time I used it, I didn't get very good welds, and the two pieces of metal that I was practicing with would actually pull apart. So that's why I didn't use it before. But I thought I would try it again, and a month or so ago, I did this test piece here, and the spots came out really well. I tried a couple of different settings along the line of the settings that Eastwood recommended, which are quite a bit higher than you normally use for this thickness of steel. This is their welder, by the way. And what I found was if I drilled down inside here and either went all the way through or just drilled, you know, a smaller diameter than the outer hole, just made a little groove in there, that I got better penetration. The heat kind of went down through and into the second piece of steel. So that's the trick I've been using, and I just got finished welding this other side of this, and boy, it went nice. So I'm gonna do the rest of this now. Here is the completed inner sill plate in the back and the inner cell box section now welded to it all around with some nice looking plug welds there, and all along the bottom, and a nice gap at the bottom left for me to room at the bottom, and at the top for me, once I clean these welds and grind them down, that'll be the space that's left for doing welding in the rocker panel. First, of course, we'll have to weld this whole assembly now into the side of the car, and I'll probably grind these welds down first and show you what they look like all cleaned up after it's clamped in position for welding onto the car. Okay, here is the left side sill assembly ready for welding on the car and clamped in position with everything lined up. You can see over here in the front where I'm going to do a butt weld, I'm using the Harbor Freight butt weld clamps, and I've got a pretty much ideal gap. You can also see behind this, pulling a little closer, that I've got a copper strip behind the gap. I'll show you that from the inside. I've also done something different on this side, learning a little bit of the 3 holes I've got over here on each side of the 8-post flange. I've put a screw through into the sill. This is the inner sill. It's already been welded to the inner sill plate, which is what this is. And I put a screw through here and a screw through here because I had gaps and had problems welding this on the other side. I eventually got it correct, but hopefully I'm going to get it right on the first shot over here. Over here I've also put a screw in here and clamped at the bottom. Along here, the door opening, everything here is level. The frame is level. I've got the foam rubber already glued to this side of the frame, and it is also level, and it's level with the inner sill here. Level going across here, clamped in here with a thick piece of copper behind it, and a very good fit here. This is two screws going into the body to frame mount, which is glued up, which is screwed up into position on the frame. And we've got a nice small gap here. Everything is lining up, as you can see me move my finger across it, quite well. So we're going to put a couple of really strong plug welds in here, some welds on each end, and then we will proceed with tack welds all along the edges in the front and the back, and some on the inside. Now over here on the inside, let me get you some better light. All right. Here you can see the copper piece. It's the same piece I used on the other side. It lined up perfectly on this side, just flipped over, so it's the other side of it is exposed to the weld this time. And it's bolted here on the body to frame mount, which of course is the one that I've repaired. Repaired the bolt going into the frame. You can see the copper running all the way back, and there's the four Harbor Freight butt weld clamps going through where the metal comes through. That's where the weld is on the other side, and so the copper extends up above the weld line, and it pulls everything together nice and flush. So, and one last thing to show you. Here's the gap, using the frame as a template for straightness. Whoops, don't fall, camera. And here's the gap that you can see, pretty even. I hope you can see it well. But it's a nice even gap between the inner sill plate, which is this piece here, all along here, and the gap in here between there and the frame is a nice even gap all the way from front to back. Here is the front part of the sill on the outside of the car, welded. This is a butt weld from here to here. That's where I had the butt weld clamps with the copper backing behind it. Also welded along this seam down along here with plug welds. Over here along the back side, on the outside, this is where I welded the area of the body that was kind of hanging loose. And here's the new sill, and it's butt welded across this gap here. This hole has to be enlarged. That hole is where the screw goes to hold the rear splash plate. Behind here is the body to frame mount that has been plug welded through the new sill and into the old body to frame mounts in this area here. And that is very solidly attached to the car, as you can see. So this is solidly attached now, and of course this is without even having the B-post welded in here. These, you can see sheet metal screws here where I have trial fitted the B-post, and those will be welded up after I weld the B-post in place. They'll be used to hold the B-post securely in the correct position before welding. So So that's the sill on the car. Next step is the V-post and then the rocker panel.